Back in the olden days, from the 10th to 15th century in medieval times, one of the most chaotic groups of despicable, no-good, silly scoundrels were the witches. These dark magic dabbling nuisances were so bothersome to the rest of the Catholics and Christians in the towns, who all believed in a higher power, aka God. And when I say they worshipped God, I mean they really worshipped him. Right now in modern times, if you don't agree that some sort of God exists and that they are superior to us mortal scumbags, you'll just be called an atheist and get hated on by little smurfs on various popular social media platforms. But back then, if you didn't believe in some sort of God, you didn't have the choice of being an atheist. You would get accused of straight up worshipping the devil, prosecuted on the stand, and depending if you're a good liar or not, you would get hung or pardoned with a near-death experience on your mind. If someone back then caught you dabbling in black magic or worshipping the devil, you were already done for. You would be whisked off to the stand where the Christians would do some not very Christian things to you. So back in the Middle Ages, if you had beef with someone, there was an easy fix. Just call them a witch and get them burned at the stake. Just finding a witch was one of the many tasks that medieval witch hunters used to perform to cleanse the world of dark magic. The majority of witches were mostly women, but a small number of them were men. Some popular witch hunters knew that upon incanting the devil, he would leave a very noticeable mark on your body that looks similar to a wart, often on your back or your neck, sometimes even your nose. This mark is called either a witch's mark or a devil's mark, and that's why if someone caught you with one of these bad boys on your back, they might snitch on you to the rest of the town. During the time of the not-so-scrum-diddly-umptious Black Plague, the world was plunged into chaos when nobody knew what the hell they were trying to do. The townies were a lot more superstitious of witches, who at the time most of them were actually regular herbalists and healers. Witch hunts rose up around this time, as many assumed that the witches were sent by the devil to plague the town and spread disease. If you were not contaminated with plague and remained one of the few that were healthy, you might be considered a witch by some observant little peasant and stand trial. The townsfolk thought that the witches had spread the plague on the devil's word and they didn't catch it for this same reason. During and after that time, it was a common belief that any regular sickness or vile plague spread to a town was the doing of a witch. Witches were said to partake in many rotten and devilish deeds, such as kidnapping and consuming young children, although some witches were just simple healers who worked with natural medicines and were greatly misunderstood. Performing a ritual, also known as incanting the devil, was a popular pastime for a common witch, where they would summon Satan to have a quick chat about their evil plans. Witches would meet with the devil, also known as Satan, at night, and often trade their souls to him in order to ask for certain favors such as the assistance of evil spirits and demons, granting them wishes such as beauty, wealth, power, and much, much more. Back then, many people thought that most bad things were caused by witches. It was said that the summoned spirits casted by witches caused a lot of chaos and could even harm other people. But one thing that witches were apparently really good at was getting themselves killed. It seemed like this was a very important part of being a witch, as they really weren't the best at stealthily infiltrating the town. Just about 35 to 50,000 witches were murked during executions in medieval times. If you were a devil-incanting, wart-bearing magic individual in the olden days, you better hide yourself well, because if you were prosecuted or put on trial to assess if you were a witch in medieval times, you had pretty much no way out. One popular method for finding a witch was swimming or ducking them. You would be restrained by several goody-goody God-believing members of the town and thrown in the lake. After this, the following procedure was decently simple to understand. If you float in water and don't let yourself sink to the bottom, you pled guilty to being a witch. Then, they'll either pick you up out of the lake right when you're on the brink of death and burn you, or repeatedly dunk you in the lake over and over, every time with you barely managing to recover. This is done using a pulling mechanism with the supposed witch strapped to a chair being lowered into the water. If they instead decide to burn you, you'll get dry very quickly as they relentlessly light you up at the stake, being terrified of your devilish satanic powers and witchcraft. If you were one of the unlucky peasants who were wrongly thrown in the lake after being accused and you didn't manage to float in the freezing lake water, at that point, you're at the bottom of the lake and the goody-goody God-believers aren't going to bother picking you up out of it after all that. This method had a 100% success rate, and none of the accused witches could get past a single trial, thanks to the incredibly talented witch-hunting skills seldom possessed by rare individuals. The Catholics were extremely proud of themselves, until they realized that the current witch-hunting meta also had a 100% casualty rate. In conclusion, witches were vile and horrible beasts that nobody loves except the devil because they simp for him. Witches varied in looks, having warts and burns everywhere, and they defied God with their evil intentions. They were hated universally throughout the medieval ages by holy beings and townsfolk alike. The moral of the story is to stop being a witch because they are wicked and immoral. Plus, you don't want to go to hell. Do you?
तेरा बजट आएगा, सुन ले मुझको गौर से, तू बजट की तलाश में, उम्मीद तुझे सब पाने की निराश ना तू